Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I have with me another very special guest. She will try to explain what she does because there's a lot of things that he does in unison, shall we say. But how are you, Elizabeth?
I'm very good today. Thank you so much, Guy, for having me on your
Yeah,
podcast as a guest. I'm
yeah.
honored to be able to speak to your listeners.
Wow, thank you. I'm honored as well that you agreed to came on. Um, So can you tell me a little bit about what you do? Because you tried to explain to me and a little dim. So I want the audience to maybe they will get exactly what you do.
So I'm a chronic pain management specialist, and I'm a trauma trained and yoga informed addiction recovery coach and ancestral clearing. And that sounds like a lot of things, like I'm a yoga
Yes.
teacher and meditation teacher, all that. But my focus is on people who experience chronic pain or are in recovery from chronic pain, and everything else I do supports that.
Mm,
So I put the chronic pain part first, and the other things come after.
mm,
Everything I do, the ancestral clearing, the yoga, the addiction recovery, it's all supports the person that's trying to
mm.
deal with a chronic pain experience.
Yeah. So just to clarify, when you say chronic pain, you mean only physically or also mentally?
Perfect question. Yeah. So chronic pain is any pain, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, any pain that's felt. The body can't tell the difference. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It all sends a signal. All those different kinds of pain send the same signal to the brain. It hurts. So chronic pain is any pain that's felt for 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more.
Mm,
So you could say anyone who's had a grief experience is either, if they're having the experience, they're in chronic pain or they're in recovery from it. Most people I know are in one or the other category. And the National Institutes of Health estimate that 25% of all people in North America suffer from chronic pain across age groups, socioeconomic measures of all kinds. 25%. And the
wow.
World Health, and the World Health Organization estimates a fifth of the world. And with COVID now, it probably went up.
Yeah.
Right? A lot more mental health problems, and as well as physical problems. It's the long term, the long haulers in COVID, they're now chronic pain. And why is that chronic pain patients? Why is that an issue? Other than the weight that we carry around it, is because chronic pain actually changes the brain and its perceptions. Anyone who's listening to this who has chronic pain will probably be nodding their heads when I go through a very short list of how that shows up in the brain. Brain fog, I can't think straight. Chaos in the brain, I can't remember stuff. And the other one is increased negative talk in the brain. I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? I'm really mad at the world, blaming others, blaming myself, that kind of thing. It gets accentuated in chronic pain. So in order to heal that, we need to bring modalities that heal the changes in the brain.
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot to talk about and to cover. And I'll just start by asking you what is like your formal, shall we say, training or education, if there is one.
Oh. So I have a degree in plant science. So I have a bachelor's in plant science, which got me started into understanding the scientific world, the scientific paradigm. I was a researcher as a graduate student in environmental studies, and did a bunch of research. So I have peer-reviewed published papers.
Mm,
but then right as I was moving at the end of my master's program, my back, an old injury my back became unstable and I needed surgery, and that just completely shifted my life. And I've experienced, as a result of that, I've experienced 40 years of chronic pain and 32 years of concurrent addiction to prescription medication.
Yeah.
And I'm like 8 years clean as of this day, but or about 8 years. I'll be 8 years clean September 15th of all that medication and of the pain. But so my experience is I have a grounding in science. I have a grounding in life experience, like the School of Hard Knocks. And I also have a grounding in the spiritual world. So I kind of have feet in these different places.
Yeah. So there's the kind of age-old question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So what came first, the kind of spiritual side or the scientific or methodical side?
Well, I love that question. I had a difficult childhood. I had a childhood with, in many ways, I was super fortunate, and in other ways, my brother and I experienced abuse. So it's this mixed bag. And my mother was bipolar. She suffered from bipolar disorder, and she was an alcoholic, and her moods were erratic. And I knew every day that everybody she got mad at everybody, but I would get clobbered at some point of the day. I would get harassed and attacked and yelled at and so forth. The problem was, and this is really interesting for a chronic pain person, I never knew when it was I knew it was going to happen every day. I just didn't know when. And that sets up a frequency in the nervous system of hypervigilance and worry, and I have to how am I going to keep myself safe? I don't know when it's going to hit, that kind of thing. That right there is a prescription for chronic pain, right there. Now, what was interesting, so you said which came first. What was interesting was I feel that I came in with the gift of gratitude. It wasn't something I made up as a kid. It was like, there it was right there. So even though I would get, I would have this challenge every day with my mom, I remember the way that I soothed myself on the inside was to give thanks that I had a roof over my head, food in my belly, clean water, a nice bed, hot shower, right? That kind of stuff. So I had this gift of gratitude, and I really feel that helped to keep me steady through the adversity. Now, I had an accident when I was 14, and I had another traumatic event when I was 15, and I never knew how to resolve any of that. Nobody around me was skilled in trauma. So that remained unresolved in my nervous system. And then the surgery and the medication and all that just amped all of it up. I finally went into a pain management program when I was 59. And I walked in with 40 years of back pain, and 52 days later, I walked out with no pain. So it was an amazing program. It's not there anymore, but the gentleman who ran that program, who passed away a few years ago, wrote a beautiful book called Conquer Chronic Pain, an Innovative Mind-Body Approach. His name is Dr. Peter Preskop, P-R-Z-E-K-O-P. And he was a chronic pain management specialist, he was an addiction doctor, and he was also a researcher, a brain physiologist. So he really understood the way the brain, the mind, body, spirit system worked. He was also a Qigong healer. So he wasn't just straight science. He was this beautiful, holistic. Yes. He didn't even want to look at my x-rays or my medical records. He's like not interested in any of that. He said to me, I want to know who you are, Elizabeth. It was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and that's then what I was thinking. Yeah, exactly.
I wrote this follow-up book called The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power, which goes through all the tools that I used and the approach that we used to really clear the pain and stay that way. Dr. Peter Prescott said to me when I left that program, he said, "You're not just a recovering addict, you're a recovering chronic pain patient. Make sure you take care of both of them. You have to use the tools every day." And this book is kind of the user's manual that goes with his kind of researchery book. And I teach both of them.
Yeah. So how did you try to maybe get away from the situation of the kind of abusive mother that was very controlling and very demanding and erratic all of the time?
That was a matter of understanding that I was powerless. I was powerless in that I didn't feel that I could run away from home, for instance. And I didn't feel at that time, child abuse really wasn't talked about too much. It was kind of like this secret. So I held it. But here was the thing. Like I said, I came in with gratitude, and I always had a sense of some kind of being held by a benevolent force. I always had that, even though, you know, things were kind of crazy, I still felt held. And so that's the spiritual part. I remember being 4 years old and asking my father, "Oh, I see there's this religious world." I didn't know what spiritual was back then. "I see that there's this religious world, and then there's this other world, and where do they meet?" And he said, "You ask too many questions." And I think I probably asked that a few more times, and I got the same answer from other people. And so I stopped asking the question out loud, but I never stopped pursuing the answer. And I remember many years ago at this point, sitting, watching the TV, watching a science program, and they brought in quantum physics. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's where they meet, in the quantum field. That's where these two worlds, the science and the spiritual, they meet in the quantum field. And it was like a eureka moment for me.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on how those kinds of two worlds merge together into a kind of a spiritual, shall we say, the golden way of existence?
I love that question. The spiritual world recognizes the field of consciousness as oneness, and it sees that we're all connected. The oneness, we're all connected. When quantum physics came to the forefront, they discovered that the past, present, and future all live in this present moment in the quantum field. And I was like, oh my God, they're connecting everything together. And I saw that. Also, I mean, I get, if I get too deep into physics papers, my brain starts to twist, because I just can't, I just don't have the math skills and the training to be able to follow that stuff. So, recently there was an article, a lot of your listeners will probably have seen this, that Google has come up with some kind of time crystal. And supposedly, or maybe, this is kind of a maybe. And I had a friend ask me, because I had sent a link to a friend of mine who likes that kind of stuff. And he asked me, he said, well, what was your conclusion when what did you realize when you read all that? And I said, well, I got so far and my brain just started to twist up, but I do know that it's going to change the way information is handled in the future. For sure. I'm not sure how that's going to affect me, but it's going to, if that's for real, it'll change how information is handled. And that, we know we've all grown up, you've grown up, and as I've gotten older, the information age has really blossomed, and how we how we manage information has changed, and it continues to change and gets faster and faster, et cetera, et cetera. I think this may change it really in a fundamental way that I can't really see because I don't really understand it on a fundamental level, but I understand it on kind of a general level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, at least to me. That I also, even on a general level, I don't understand it, like quantum physics and stuff like this. But so what I wanted to say, to ask maybe, that maybe we are kind of shaping, when you said that the kind of information age is blossoming right in front of our very eyes, like we're some kind of cocoons that will blossom into a great kind of butterfly. But I don't know, we are reshaping an entire evolution as a species, and it is very difficult to handle. This has taken a sharp left turn, this conversation, but I like it. And so can you tell me what we can benefit in this kind of a day and age to really shape ourselves once again? But we only see the good things now, because nobody watches the news and everyone is posting. No one goes outside of their house. So everybody sees the kind of, picture perfect kind of image that everybody projects. So what do you think about that kind of future? There is no suffering, no fighting, no wars, just a virtual world, and the rest is null and void, shall we say?
That's an interesting concept. I was just talking with somebody about, I think last week, about what it would be like to, at least in this country and maybe even in England. You would know more about than me. But in America, we were talking about what would it be like to truly reconcile with the indigenous people and with the African Americans, to actually own what went down in those two cultures, and really meet that, face that, and really bow and reconcile. We were talking about that, and what I said was just kind of bringing the concept. I really wanted to bring ancestral clearing to that, and we can talk about that in a minute. I really wanted to bring that in as a modality. And also, I actually sit in meditation from time to time and actually feel what it would be like for that to happen. Like, what would it feel like in the body to have that reconciliation done? And it's a very powerful kind of meditation, because it's a very peaceful space. And it's a very powerful, I feel it's a very powerful kind of meditation. Again, we're working in the present moment. And when we work in the present moment, we have access to past, present, and future. So we're sitting in meditation, we're in the field of consciousness, we're projecting an intention out there of what would it be like, what would it feel like to have this honesty and reconciliation for past wrongs, serious wrongs, and how would that shape the world? It's a little different answer, it's a slightly different answer than what I think you're asking for, but I kind of have one, I kind of have one foot in the current world, where there's a lot of fear out there. There's people that are like not looking at it at all, but then there are people that are in it where there's a lot of fear. And my feeling is that a lot of the suffering is because we're not willing to face the wrongs, the hurts and wrongs that we did in the past as a culture. We're not willing to face and come into reconciliation for those.
Yeah, I think maybe the word reconciliation, it's I don't know if it's out of place, but I'm not from the American culture. I wouldn't know. The little I know about American history is shaped by what my culture tries to project to me, and I'm blocked off to any kind of real understanding. I can go and visit all the different, I don't want to say the kinds of lynching sites and where they owned the slaves and the, you know, all the kind of the cotton fields, and I wouldn't, but I feel that I wouldn't be able to understand it because I'm removed from that kind of culture. Although I admire the kind of American, you know, can-do attitude and the American exceptionalism, I don't believe it 100%, but I admire the kind of the general sentiment, shall we say, not all the bad that comes with the good inside the bag. But I want to ask you, wow, we're we're heading towards a very you know, dangerous kind of place, but because we were talking about something, one thing, and now we're shifting off to something completely different, as Monty Python Flying Circus once said, which everyone needs to know, have to know. And if you don't know this, what are you doing with your time? But just to get to get back on track, maybe or maybe not, talk about actually working with patients who are suffering from chronic pain. What do you prescribe to people to do? Kind of exercise, maybe kind of a herbal medicine, maybe going outside, hiking, exercising. What will be the perfect kind of treatment or long-term kind of treatment for people who are suffering from chronic pain?
Great question. I'm just going to just say straight up, I'm a chronic pain management specialist. I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but I'm more like a coach, and I have the experience. What I do with a new client, and I don't call them patients, I call them clients because I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, yeah.
What I do with a new client is I listen to their story for about 5 minutes. That's all. We tend to get identified with our story in chronic pain, but they do need to at least speak their truth, because the chronic pain patients are normally complain all the time or don't say anything at all. And so we need to at least express the truth for ourselves in front of someone else who understands.
Maybe hypochondriacs are also kind of chronically pain.
Sure.
In pain.
So we start with 5 minutes of the story, no longer than that, because I don't want them to be identified with their pain as an identity. So the idea there is, my true self is an eternal soul. My body is in me. I am not my body. My body's in me. I'm not my pain. My pain is in me. I'm not my thoughts. My thoughts are in me. Right. So there's an understanding there. So we don't want to, what are we identifying with? Are we identifying with the eternal self, or are we identifying with these other things, which are not, they're going to change. They're not permanent. So that's first thing. Second thing I do is an ancestral clearing to help them release the burden, unresolved burden that they come in from their lineage, which we can talk about in a second. Third thing is I find out if they can sit still. Lots of times the people, if they have a trauma background, sitting still is a problem. So we have to work through that. But if they can sit still, then we go into meditation. Like I said, chronic pain changes the brain and creates chaos, and meditation is probably the most powerful, other than getting off medication, for like not taking medication. The meditation helps to heal the brain because it quiets the mind. So it's very important. And then I bring other things behind that, but those are the first things that I do. We want to make sure that we're not judging our experience as bad.
Okay.
I mean, if we're in pain, we can put ourselves right into a cycle of suffering. We experience pain, and we end up being isolated because we can't share it with other people, and we kind of get disconnected from source energy, from the infinite, because maybe we feel like we're being judged or blamed or punished, and we even get disconnected from ourselves because we're not who we used to be, right? So there's this isolation aspect. Then we get in relationship with, we get attached, we get in relationship with this pain because we want to change it, we want to control it, we get attached to it, and then we try and control it, and when we can't control it, we get a resentment, and we get mad at it, and then we get more disconnected. We get in more of an attachment, this kind of fight with the pain. We try and control it even more. We can't. We get more of a resentment in this downward spiral. I call it the cycle of suffering. So the idea that what I do is I help people reverse that cycle.
Wow, reversing the cycle. That's interesting. Like a kind of a detective looking for clues that the perpetrator might have left at the scene.
Well, that's kind of what we do with ancestral clearing. It's kind of interesting you brought that in. Ancestral clearing is a process that was pioneered by Howard Wills, and later further developed and trademarked by John Newton of Health Beyond Belief, who has a worldwide audience, and they both do. And what we do in ancestral clearing is recognize that we come into this life with the gifts and the burdens of our ancestors, the unresolved burden, and the process of ancestral clearing helps us uncover where that's hiding in the body. So it's kind of like detective work.
It sounds very interesting, and at least on paper, when you say kind of ancestral clearing, or I don't know, ancestral draining, maybe. Can you explain a little bit about what does that kind of process look like? Because I can't imagine it in my head, and I'm trying to say.
Well, I'll give everybody an experience of it.
Okay.
And we don't have a lot of time, but I'll give you an experience of it.
No, that's fine. I mean, maybe if you don't have time, that it's okay. We can end it early. Yeah.
I'm good. I thought we just had 30 minutes, so I'm like looking at we're about 30 minutes. So
yeah. So we'll end it after you try to illustrate what ancestral clearing is. Yeah.
Beautiful. So as I said, it helps us release unresolved burden that we come in from our ancestors, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple of examples. One, like my parents were both in the Second World War. They both experienced trauma. They came back from the war. They didn't know what to do with the trauma. They just pushed through. So they carried it in their bodies. They came back from the war, got married, had 2 kids. My brother and I passed it on to us. I didn't know what it was. I felt it. I remember by the time I was 4, I'm like, what is this thing in this family? What is this weight in here? And no one would talk about it. So I didn't know what it was. And I just carried it until I learned about ancestral clearing, and I was finally able to release that weight. Another example of just how this stuff is passed down, look to the monarch butterfly. I don't know if they're in England, but in America, there's this thing called the monarch butterfly, and it migrates from wherever it is in North America, and it can be northern North America or mid or southern. They all migrate. On the 5th generation, they migrate to Florida, Texas, or Mexico, depending on where they were, where their ancestors were literally came from. So that information, it's every 5th generation. So how does that work? That gets passed down genetically, right? The imprints of the past get passed down epigenetically and we know this now on the gene. And another example is in rats. That the most recent study I read was in rats, where this man runs a rat lab, and he helps he studies rats, and so this big batch of rats were born into his lab. That's all they know is the lab. They're all playing together one day in this common room, and he takes a cat hair and puts it down right in the middle of the room, and they all scatter. Now, how does that work? They've never met a cat, right? But they know to leave, they know to move, right? So that's another example of, and that's not even a human. So I've talked about insects and mammals and then humans, right? So the DNA, the experiences, the things we need to survive, they get passed down in the lineage through the DNA. Now, I'll give you an experience of what we do in ancestral clearing. It's a process where there's 5 techniques, and I'm just going to share with you one of them today. We're actually calling on consciousness, source energy itself to help us heal. And I don't consider myself a healer. I consider myself a guide, because each of us inside of us have the intelligence to heal. A doctor could set a bone, right, or stitch up a wound. You can't tell the body how to heal, right? So I'm not a healer. I just am a guide. And so I sit as an ancestral clearing practitioner. I sit between the infinite source energy and the client and the audience. At this point, I'm just focusing the work. That's all I'm doing. I'm just holding a space and focusing the work. So we bring in, we ask for higher power energy, and we use this a concept of about 80% is forgiveness, and it means offering up the burden to the infinite to help us clear it.
Wow.
And so, so I'll take you through
a process. Cool, yeah.
I'll take you through just a short process of what it
sounds like confessions, Hail Mary, thank you.
Kind of like that, but not exactly. I understand what you're saying. So if everybody listening here, and this will work just as powerfully on the replay, if everybody listening will just feel in their body around the concept of maybe injustice in their life or injustice in the world. Just feel where you feel it, relax the breath, and stay present while I say these words. Creator, all that you are, please help everyone listening to this for all the times you felt caught in the middle with your family, for the times growing up parents didn't see eye to eye, for the times there were conflicts, differences, and misunderstandings, and for the times you felt, I want to help them, but I can't, or I'm not sure what to do. For anything you experienced growing up that didn't feel good, that hurt you in your heart, that hurt you in your stomach, for the times you felt afraid and didn't know why, for all the times you weren't nurtured, loved, supported, and cherished the way you needed, didn't get the healthy love and affection you needed, for all the times you didn't feel cherished and respected in your family and in life out in the world, for all hurts and wrongs, for your whole family and lineage, going back 500 generations, for all injustice, hardship, struggle, displacement, and for all physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, sexual, and financial hurts and wrongs, for all abandonment and rejection, times you didn't get what you needed, times you felt or believed, God, where are you? Please help all of you to forgive each other, to forgive yourselves, to forgive all people. All people forgive you for the highest good. Please and thank you, Creator, all that you are. Please and thank you.
Oh,
Now take a breath in and let it out. And how does that feel in the body?
I've seen the light, I gotta tell you. No, but that was a beautiful kind of prayer or chant or mantra or whatever kind of word you want to use, whatever relates to you, but you gotta take it to heart when you know how to repeat, the kinds of those kinds of chants that help you clear your mind. Maybe not clear your ancestral history, but maybe clear yourself of the blame, shall we say, or unshackle those kind of manacles that were strapped to your bones, or were seared to your bones, shall we say, when you were born. Yeah.
And we were working in the present moment. And remember when we talked about the quantum field, when we work in the present moment, we have access to the past, present, and future. So when we do this work, we don't only clear ourselves, we clear our ancestors and our descendants as well. So it's a very powerful practice. It's interesting to discover what people's reactions and how it shifts their life.
Yeah. So I want to thank you so much, Elizabeth, for this great talk. Whatever this is, or this is namaste, or there are different kinds of doing like this or like this one. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I won't keep you up, and this was a lovely talk, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of things to talk about in the future, if you're willing. Yeah.
I am. And if anybody would like to get a hold of me, they can find me at my website, Elizabeth-Kipp.com. You got to put the dash in there because Elizabeth-Kipp.com is a photographer who's not me. So Elizabeth-Kipp.com.
She's any good? Yeah.
She's great. Yeah, she's great. It's just not ancestral clearing and chronic pain and addiction recovery stuff. It's just different. Yeah. And thank you so much for letting me come on and share some time with you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.